Falcom really runs this JRPG game, bro. Atlas, Square Enix, absolute frauds. They can't compete with the greatness, the glory of Nihon Falcom. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Man, I've waited so long for this day. It's been almost a full year since I did that review on the Japanese version of Ys 10. Looking back, I feel like I wasn't able to really dive into why I love the game so much, considering all I really talked about was the gameplay. But we're in big 2024 now. I'm not the same man I was 10 months ago. And now, with the English version of Ys 10 finished, I can really give it my all on explaining my feelings towards this game. Not just the gameplay like last time, but the story, characters, and even more. But before I start, I have to say, if you aren't a fan of the words peak fiction, goat, raw, fire, click off the video, because this game, Ys 10 NORDICS, is one of, if not the greatest game ever made. But enough with the intro. Let's get straight to it. Starting off, I want to get the less important stuff out the way. First thing being the graphics. I spoke on this just a bit in that old Ys 10 review, but I'll try to go into more detail this time around. I'll be honest, this is the greatest looking Ys game we've ever gotten. I know a lot of people just say the game looks like Ys 8, but slightly better, but they're not looking at the big picture here. How the game looks alone isn't what's important. Although, I gotta say, to me, the game consistently looks better than Ys 8. Like, there are some genuinely beautiful scenes in this game, man. But more than that, the game doesn't just look nice for Falcom standards. It moves beautifully as well. The combat animations took a massive step up compared to Ys 8 and 9. The game is just so smooth and fluid, and it feels amazing to play. The flashy moves that Otto and Karja pull off, and the actual well-animated cinematics are just amazing to watch. It almost feels like Falcom is showing off, trying to tell everyone that we're in a new era for Ys, and it's only gonna get even better from here. The only bad thing I can say is that it never feels like Ys and Trails are graphically on the same level. In my old review, I mentioned that it was kinda sad to see that the latest Ys game never looked on par with the latest Trails game, although to be fair, Ys 10 was built for the Switch, so it's understandable that it looks the way it does. But now, I can honestly say I'm completely fine with the graphics here. Ys doesn't require the level of detail that goes into a Trails game. In fact, I don't think graphics are ever a priority for either series. As long as the game is enjoyable, I don't care what it looks like. If I actually cared about graphics that much, there's no way Ys 9 would be my favorite game ever, but it is, because graphics don't dictate if a game is good or not. Ys 10 isn't the greatest looking game ever, but comparing it to the prior games, it's amazing. I'm really excited to see what Falcom can pull off for the next game, whether it be the Ys 5 remake or straight up Ys 11. Whatever it ends up being, if Falcom can stay on this level or improve, I have faith that the next games are going to be just as good. The next thing I want to go over is the music. Although this is an Ys game, so the music is basically guaranteed to be good. And yeah, I can say for certain that they didn't disappoint at all. So many songs have been stuck in my head since I finished the game. They really cooked here. I think as of right now, my favorite song is definitely Young Swordsman in the Eyes. The moment where it plays in the game is just so peak, I swear. It fits perfectly. I swear, Jindo's music just keeps getting better. I can't wait to hear what he cooks up in whatever the next game ends up being. And whenever we end up getting the Super Ultimate album for Ys 10, I just know he's gonna go crazy. Although it's not just Jindo. Koguchi really cooked on the soundtrack too. For his first time doing music for Ys, I think he did really damn well. My favorites of his are probably tied between Ride on Mana and Operation Sandra's. I think the first Falcom game Koguchi composed for was Daybreak. I really can't wait to hear what he did in that game. once I get caught up anyways, as well as what he'd cook up for future East games. Although, as good as the music was, the one negative I gotta talk about is the song placement. Don't get me wrong, it didn't ruin the experience or anything. It wasn't even that big of a deal, but I feel like if certain songs just played at different points, they would have made some bosses or scenes a bit better. Like, for instance, Overblades and Through the North Wind. Why are these songs only used in super short mini bosses or the tuna fishing minigame? You hardly ever get to hear more than like half of the song. And don't even get me started on them using the final boss theme in chapter 1. Like, come on, out of all the songs that could have played there? Again, this didn't hurt the experience at all, but it was still something I noticed. Alright, it's time to lock in. We're at arguably the most important part to any East game, the gameplay. Now, I already did a pretty in-depth video on the gameplay of East 10, so instead of strictly talking about how things work, I'm gonna speak on how enjoyable the whole experience was. I can say for certain that my feelings haven't changed a bit since I played the Japanese version last year. This game is still insanely fun. The cross-action system is the innovation the series desperately needed, cause if East 10 ended up being the 5th party system game, I don't think it would have been anywhere near as amazing. The combat in this game is just pure fun. I genuinely get locked in whenever I'm fighting. After a while, it just feels like my hands are moving on their own. I knew exactly when to back off and guard, when to go on the offensive, when to switch characters and chain combos. It was insane.
Oh my god, this is just like Tokyo Xanadu.
Dog, what the hell are you doing here? Your next game doesn't even have a proper trailer. Get the fuck out of my review. Anyways, as I was saying before, you get into this flow state where everything just makes sense after a while. The game just feels so fluid as you're constantly running around. And it's not just the cross-action system that made the gameplay so fun. The ship sailing was great too, although like I've said previously, it does start out a bit iffy with how slow your ship is. But after just a few speed upgrades, sailing around became way more fun. Even after being able to fast travel across nearly the entire sea, I still ended up just sailing from place to place. Being at sea just had such a good vibe, and the fact that the ship itself was your base made things even more enjoyable. I always felt the need to keep the ship as fully upgraded as possible, and to always talk to the crew members on the ship. I think as the base of operations for this game, the Sandras is amazing. Definitely on par with the Dandelion Bar from East 9. Maybe even better. Another thing that's done really well in this game are the recapture battles. Basically, this game's equivalent to the raids from the last 2 games. The recapture battles feel like a complete breath of fresh air compared to the raids. In East 9, the battles in the Grimwald Nocts weren't really that much of an issue. They were pretty easy, to be honest. The East 8 raids though, they were kind of annoying. Especially whenever you were in the middle of exploring, you'd have to go all the way back to base to do a raid. But in East 10, you have to actually go to the island to do the raid. It's not like you're on one side of the sea and suddenly get an urgent message about an island being raided and have to sail all the way back. When you're traveling around, you can clearly see an island with a barrier. Wait. Oh no.
Did someone say barrier?
Dude, get the fuck out of here. I finished both of your games already. Anyways, like I was saying, you can clearly see an island with the barrier when you're out exploring, and you can choose when you want to do a recapture. Although in my case, I just did them all immediately. They were just that fun, and as the game progressed, the recaptures slowly grew more elaborate, not just from the number of waves increasing, but even with the fighting you do when you get onto the island. It never felt like the raids just blurred together, or that I was doing them just because. I did them all because I wanted to, because it was fun. One more thing I want to mention about the gameplay is just how the game feels. Even now, I'm not completely sure how to explain this, but East 10 compared to 8 and 9 feels way more heavy. Your attacks have a lot more impact than before, and it's really satisfying to land attacks, especially when you're playing as Karja and you break the enemy's defense gauge. Ado and Karja themselves feel pretty weighted, especially when you're using Mana Ride or swinging around with Mana String. The momentum you get is really noticeable and it feels really nice. I don't know if the feeling East 10 has is specific for this game or if it'll stay for the next few games because it's tied more to the new engine they're using, but But either way, I'm a big fan of the new gameplay feel. If Falcom was able to get 4 games out of the party system, then I'm praying the cross-action system can do the same. I feel like they'll probably have to innovate and change up the gameplay at least a good amount for the next game, considering the combat in East 10 was basically completely tied to the mana cuffs. While the solo sections in East 10 were fun, and a new solo adventure for Adol would be cool, there's no way they do this 2-person combat style and not let Dogi be playable again. Or maybe a game where Adol and Gias have to team up together. They could even have Credo there too. There's so many options here, man. I just know Falcom is gonna cook. Alright, with that, I can move on to the next section. Ever since the game released, despite all the praise the game has gotten, I've heard some complaints. While most of them are pretty valid, there are some that kinda make no sense, or some that are just nitpicks and non-issues. One of those complaints being that the various islands you come across at sea and get to explore lack variety, and all start to blur together after long enough. This, to me, just isn't true at all, especially considering the fact I ended up going for 100% map completion. Sure, not every island is massive, but it never really started to feel like I was at the same place over and over again. It would definitely feel that way if you were going off purely how the islands look, but if you just look a bit deeper, you'll understand that it's actually the layout of each island that makes them feel distinct. Some are more flat and straightforward, some are smaller and a lot more simple to explore. Some islands are way larger and take a while to discover everything, having multiple sections where you explore through a huge cave system. Some of the islands even have verticality, where you gotta climb up to continue exploring. It may not seem like that big of a deal here, but when I was actually playing the game, those little distinctions and being able to say how one island was different from the last one I was on was just really fun. It made adventuring even more enjoyable. The other complaint I've heard about is that this game's characters aren't as good as East 8's. And before I really get into this, I just want to say, we gotta stop putting East 8 on a pedestal like it's the greatest game in the entire series. If we're being for real, it's not even top 3. The game is great, don't get it twisted, but constantly seeing people try to compare 10 to 8 is kinda starting to annoy me. Before the game was even out, I kept seeing people say over and over, yeah, the game looks great, but I doubt it'll top East 8. Needless to say, this game clears East 8 by a long shot. The characters alone puts this game miles ahead. Not just specifically Karja, who's an amazing character on her own, but the main Karnak cast too. They're all amazing characters. I found myself starting to care about them and getting attached really quickly. They feel authentic, like an actual group of teenagers and young adults who got thrown into a completely awful situation and have to struggle and come together to overcome all the challenges they're faced with while growing and maturing over the course of the journey. By the end of the game, even I could tell that everyone had grown and changed significantly compared to when I first met them. They all feel like a real group of friends. This feels insane for me to say, but genuinely as a whole, I think East 10 has a better main cast than East 9. And remember, East 9 is like my favorite game of all time. But even then, in East 9, the characters I can say I actually loved were Hawk, Doll, and Aprilis. Everyone else was cool, but I just didn't feel as strongly. In East 10 though, the entire main cast is great. Although if I had to pick favorites, it'd have to be Karja, Cruz, Rafe, and Mirabelle. Their dialogue and interactions were just great. It always seemed to put a smile on my face.
Judging by the clouds, I'd say this rain won't be letting up anytime soon. Sitting here and waiting for it to clear up would just be a waste of time.
That's too bad.
You seriously think giving me the sad eyes is gonna work? I said no.
What's really crazy is that even the side characters in this game were great, to a surprising degree if I'm being honest. My favorites were definitely Lux and Sash, and also Milette for
She's so fine, she done pissing me off!
reasons. But really, the side characters were amazing. The ship slowly felt more lively as I rescued more people and got them to join. Before long, they felt less like random NPCs from town and more like a family. I'd always take the opportunity to talk to everyone when I had downtime. It was fun. But the real star of this game was Karja. Her dynamic with Otto was just amazing. From all the flashy stuff the two of them pull off in combat, to Karja always mentioning how much of a freak Otto is for adventure. It's all great. Over the course of the game, seeing the two of them become closer, getting used to being around each other, and fighting together was so nice. Noticing the gradual change in dialogue between them was a real nice feeling too. This is actually one of the few times where the whole sibling bond thing is actually done amazingly well, because Ado and Karja genuinely felt like siblings, and the Kuronosandras might as well be the rest of the family. The final thing I want to go over is the story. I'm honestly so glad to be able to talk about this after so long. Last year, when I played the Japanese version, the story was just something I had to gloss over since I didn't exactly bother trying to translate stuff after a while. But now, having finished the English version of the game, I can say for certain that the story in East 10 is one of the greatest ever, man. I'm not joking. This is really top 3 stories in the entire series. I swear to God, this game had me feeling emotions I didn't even know I could feel. I don't even want to go into too much detail so I don't ruin the experience for anyone. But the one single thing I need to mention is that final boss fight. Best in the series, nothing else comes close. The music, the cinematics, hearing Ado actually speak to Karja in a cutscene, oh my fucking god, man. Look, if you weren't interested or it didn't move you, I don't care. I don't. If it didn't move you, I don't care. It moves me. Greatest of all time, I swear to God. One of the most life-changing games I have ever played. If they keep cooking like this, we're gonna have a streak of like 4 straight back-to-back 10 out of 10s. We are not ready for the future of this franchise, man. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I had to say. Words can hardly describe how much I enjoyed my time playing East 10. The year-long wait was well worth the time. From a pure gameplay perspective, I don't think any other game is gonna top this. Like, yeah, for personal reasons and as a whole, I still have East 9 above this, but I'd be lying if I said these two games weren't at least on par with each other. To be honest, it's hard to believe I even finished the game already. I had so much fun that time seemed to just fly by. But as I've learned already from a different series, good things never last forever. My playthrough was amazing, and I'll be eagerly awaiting to see where Ado heads to next. Anyways, that's all for me. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.